Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Did somebody say my name? I think they did. Hang on, I'm just a little bit behind the curve here. There we go. Hi, how you doing? It's a Tuesday. It's the 20th of June, and Tuesday means Sue's Day. So my sister, Suze, is on the line. Susan.
Hey.
How? Hi. How? How?
Hi. How?
How? Hi. How? Hey. How? How?
We're allowed to say that now and not upset anybody. The Supreme Court has doubled down on First Amendment and hateful speech.
That is correct. You mean by saying how, that was like disrespectful of Native Americans?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, interesting. We should stumble into that because I sort of want to, actually, for those who don't know, the Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision, which is why...
Without the participation of our latest judge, because he must not have been there for the argument or something.
Okay, well, fine. But it was an 8-0 decision. And, it's so rare for me to be reading something that Samuel Alito wrote and nodding my head. Yes, that is correct. I mean, really, the ACLU will be very happy about this decision. It's a First Amendment decision, and you may have... I've been watching this case for years. There's a rock band in Seattle, right, called the Slants, and they're all Asian. Slant being I guess, generally a pejorative for Asians because of their slanted eyes, but these guys are Asians. So they decided to call their band the Slants. And they applied for a patent, to protect their name. And the patent office turned them down.
Which is, by the way, is something I don't quite understand. I could understand applying for a trademark.
But a patent?
But a patent doesn't make sense.
You mean that they applied for a patent for a name?
Yeah,
I thought a
trademark
patent was a invention.
It's you can patent an idea. You can, if it's about how to do something.
Uh-huh.
And you can patent a invention or a thing. But your name, if you want to protect it, is trademarked.
Well, this actually is trademark. But I mean, that is what this is. But you're saying, why would a trademark go to the... Oh, because you know what the office is called?
The Office of Patents and Trademarks.
Yeah. The Office of Patents and Trademarks. So, okay.
I was just clearing that up.
Okay.
You were mentioning patents.
So they were told we ain't going to let you trademark your name because it's pejorative. And they said, yoo-hoo, we're Asian. We're all Asian. We ain't using it pejoratively. We're using it to reclaim it, sort of like gays reclaiming the word queer, right? Anyway, the Supreme Court, as we said, without dissent, said that that's nonsense. And here's what Alito said. Here's where I'm agreeing with Justice Alito. He says that suppressing viewpoints that offend people strikes at the heart of the First Amendment. Speech that demeans on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, age, disability, or any other similar ground is hateful. But the proudest boast of our free speech jurisprudence is that we protect the freedom to express the thought that we hate. And this is something that so many Americans don't get. They don't understand that the glory of the First Amendment...
No, it's why they hate the ACLU.
I know,
they just
right.
think of the ACLU protects Nazis.
Right. The glory of the First Amendment is it protects speech. It doesn't protect only the speech you feel comfortable with or you agree with. As a matter of fact, here's where you'll know if you really do support free speech. If, in fact, you can tolerate someone being allowed to say things that you find repugnant. If you acknowledge that, yes, they have that right, and you have the right to walk. Heck, it's easy to support the First Amendment when you say, well, I have the right to say this, and everything I agree with, I think, yes, of course, is protected speech. No, the First Amendment gets, as I always say, prickly and pesky and, drives you nuts when it's protecting the speech you find repellent. And they got it right. What this does, though, is mean that the Washington Redskins are going to be able to hang on to their name. Here's how that works, though. Public pressure, right? The Redskins would drop that name in a second if, in fact, it began having an impact on them financially, right? Don't you think?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So if
it's the way, and that's fair game. I mean, that's
right.
What Planned Parenthood has been fighting for years. We have the right to an abortion, but public opinion and crafty PR and demonstrators can sway what people allow.
So
for good or ill.
So I wonder if the Slants are any good, Suze.
I don't know.
Anyone heard their music?
That becomes beside the point. I've never heard them.
Well, they sure got a name for themselves.
No, but it also casts a whole different, you have to be very careful about how you defend taking down these Confederate statues. Because they are also, symbolic speech.
Not if they're on public. Wait.
But you have to be very careful that the argument is yes, the speech is protected, but not in this place, which signifies endorsement by the city. But that becomes the argument. Not that you aren't and shouldn't be confused with, no, as a matter of fact, these monuments might be very important, put in a place where it can be contextualized.
A museum of some sort.
A museum, a Civil War museum.
Yeah. But not in the town square.
But not in the town square. But the object should not be to take them away and forbid them. That's the difference.
Well, see, but you're talking in a nuanced way. And, Suze, nuance is so
I know, passe.
I know. I mean, come on. It's either this or that. That's all we can handle these days, this or that. You're with me or you're against me. I believe I'm quoting our former President George W. Bush, who now looks like a frickin' genius, right?
Yeah, I mean, way to get your whole reputation rehabilitated in 8 years? It's
well, it's all about relativity.
It's all about relativity.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to look pretty damn good.
Yeah,
Even
man.
He laughs at it.
I know. I look like a friggin' genius, says George W. Really. I mean, he does. Oh, this computer's driving me nuts today. So.
I know. I feel sorry for him. Turns out all he ever wanted to be was a crappy artist.
Well, he's an okay artist, so he won't be hanging in the Metropolitan Museum, but he's a pretty good artist for somebody who just took it up.
Yeah.
So this need to shut down things we don't like brings us to Julius Caesar, right?
Yeah, which frankly I think it craps up Julius Caesar to do what they did. But
yeah,
anyway.
I agree, and I disagree with what they did too. But that's an artistic choice.
That's an artistic choice,
and
I think a bad one.
Yeah. It pulls away from.
Distracting.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's distracting. And it becomes more of a circusy element in a play that does not require circus event.
Well, and I think it treats. I think it is a sophomoric attempt, to make it new and fresh and show how it applies to real life now and how it's just like current and blah, blah. Well, duh. If your audience is there, have enough respect for them to do it the way it was intended to be done, and they can figure that out for themselves. They can marvel about, oh, geez.
Well, I've seen, but I mean, I have seen artists. I saw an opera once. I forget which one because opera goes in one ear with me and out the other, but it was pretty impressive. And it had been, an opera that was supposed to be in God knows where, Venice, let's say, and it had been updated so that it was they were wearing clothes like we wear, and I didn't think it detracted at all from the story. So whatever. This is opinions of people.
Well,
but
it can be done well and it can be done poorly. I'm just saying in this case, it becomes the star of the show and it's stupid.
Yeah. So, other productions of Shakespeare plays around the country have been receiving, like, death threats.
Why? Because Shakespeare is anti-Trump?
I guess. I don't know. And other plays being done in parks. Okay, so why did the sound change on me just now? I'm not happy.
You're not happy?
No, I don't like that at all.
Well, it's now coming out in both headphones.
There's a slight buzz in the back, and I feel tinny. So, there, I don't know. That's better, whatever that is. Sorry, guys. As we continue our puttering around. Somebody wrote a piece about all this that I got a kick out of, and now I've just, of course, lost it. God dang it! Susan?
Yes?
I don't know. Help me.
Well, I don't know what piece you're referring to.
I don't, but...
And I can't sort your
do
papers or
something.
Anything. You want me to sing God Bless America while you look?
That would be good. We'd lose the audience.
God bless
America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her.
Through the night with the light from above, from the mountains.
Da to the prairies, da to the oceans.
The ocean.
And ba 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 ba.
With foam.
Wait. Oh, foam, yeah.
God
Bless America.
My home.
Our home, sweet home. Oh, is it mine?
Mine.
It's not
I
our
did the
sweet
whole
home.
thing, word perfect.
I think you did. My home,
did.
sweet home. Yeah. Okay, so here's
it?
yeah, I think I did. Okay. Is anyone still there? Okay. So, this person
If they're still with us after that, okay.
Okay. Plenty of conservatives like to believe that illiberalism is confined to liberal college students. And certainly there is evidence that a lot of college students are at the vanguard of hostility to free speech, both in the United States and Europe. But as I have written time and again, attempts to stamp out speech are not confined to young or old or left or right. This is not what I wanted. And yes, attempts to shut down Julius Caesar, like attempts to shut down conservative campus speakers, are about objections to words and beliefs. They are not about protecting politicians or vulnerable minority groups from physical harm, despite the claims of would-be censors. If this were really about blocking public entertainment that put lives at risk, you'd find more Trump fans and college students alike disrupting football games. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And here is she quotes one of the lines in Julius Caesar. And how prophetic is this? Because Shakespeare wrote this hundreds upon hundreds of years ago. How many ages hence shall this our lofty scene be acted over, in states unborn and accents yet unknown? And this is spoken by Cassius after he smears himself with Caesar's blood. And the reality is if we can control our censors, then those words, that scene, will continue to be played in places unborn and accents unknown, right?
Right.
Man, illiberal is what we are. Close it down. I don't like it. Which brings me...
It offends me. You can't have it.
Right. I refuse to let you hear that thing which offends me. God
well,
dang it.
I mean, if we could do this, we could have banned men's golf pants years ago.
Never say things like that when I have a mouthful of Diet Coke, Susan. Oh, I was at a party last night, small dinner party last night, and I forgot. Someone said something to me, which I took exception to, and I retorted so brilliantly that he, who had done it, what did he have in his... He had taken a drink of something.
He spat it, though.
He didn't. He snorted. What ended up happening is whatever he had in his mouth went up his nose, went up his nasal, and he began choking, and he had to leave the table, hacking and coughing. Because he
killed him.
I almost killed him. He sort of snorted, is what happened. I said something bang to him, and he went.
He ended up inhaling the fluid.
That's what happened. Yeah. Isn't that how rock stars died? It gets a kind of thing where you sort of
where you aspirate.
Aspirate. Yeah. Isn't that what he did? He aspirated. And one of the people there was a doctor, and he actually called in from the dining room to the kitchen with a look of some concern on his face and said, "Are you okay?" He turned bright red first. His face turned bright red.
There's nothing to do. Right. You just gotta keep coughing until it stops.
I know.
But it's awful.
But that was
and everything else.
I know, but it was what a retort on my part, huh? I almost took him down.
Well,
literally.
We don't know. We just have the empirical evidence. We don't actually know what you said.
I know. I can't even remember. It was a dinner party. But it was good. It was really good. So this comes to, I want to talk about something that drives me insane. I did not hear the term cultural appropriation until, I don't know, a year ago maybe? Did you know it as a concept, as a thing?
I mean, I think I've been aware of it for longer than...
Okay, whatever. I didn't realize what a thing it was until my son started, anytime I said something, wore something, blah something, cooked something, he would say, cultural appropriation.
I know, but he was...
He was being...
I know.
Well, he was making fun of cultural appropriation is what he was doing.
Right.
Now...
Because, I mean, I'm looking at an ersatz Persian rug on my floor.
There you go.
I guess is culturally appropriated.
Yes, it is. The entire United States of America, the land that we love, is a cultural appropriation. Is it not? I mean, that is what makes us great. We appropriated other cultures, their music, their food, all of the stuff. We brought in all kinds of different cultures, and we made this stew. We mixed it up. And out came something called Americans.
Yeah, just use jazz as an example.
Okay.
I mean, its roots are,
Totally
start in the black. But together, between genius black people and genius white people, it's become this growing thing that constantly changes and is great because it's influenced by everything.
If the Beatles had not been able to dip into, Chuck Berry and all these other things, and the Stones, and did it out of love and appreciation, and then built on it in their own way. And I'm sure, did Chuck Berry take offense? Did he take offense, or did he say thank you? Thank you for bringing my music to a broader audience. Thank you for, wow, look what you just did with that. I never would have thought of that. I mean, you can't own stuff like once it's out there.
But I don't know any musicians that, for example, the Beatles, as you use them, that haven't openly credited and said,
absolutely,
this is what I was listening to.
Right.
This is what made me want. So that changes it from an appropriation to homage.
I agree.
And there's a difference. Appropriating something is taking it without giving it credit or without even acknowledging that it comes from someplace else. It's just steal.
Right, is stealing. Generally, when we appropriate things from minority cultures, I guess that's where this whole thing is, because it's a minority culture, okay? And the larger culture appropriates it. Why is that seen as an offense as opposed to exactly what you said, an homage? God, that's beautiful. I want to play that. God, that food's good. I want to cook it. I want to eat it. And as a matter of fact, I think I'll throw in a little of this. The whole idea of American culture is one huge appropriation. And it created something glorious.
Yeah, speaking of which, Leah and I made the most delicious thing for dinner. And what was it? It was a rice bowl filled with fresh vegetables and chicken that we grilled and marinated in lemon, and the salad dressing was fish sauce and coconut milk and lime juice, and it was really good. Talking about cultural appropriation.
Yeah. In our dress, in our hairstyles, in our music, in our way of speech, my God, if we go down this road, you know where we end up? We end up in a totally segregated society. We end up in exactly the opposite of what I thought the idea of America was, as an ingatherer.
Everybody becomes ghettoized, and everybody is only allowed to do that which they started with. So you and I would be back in a shtetl someplace.
That's right.
Being
wearing a wig.
Wearing a wig and being Orthodox Jews.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Actually, though, I want to say I once took a class at Northwestern in which the professor argued that it was the French who first opened the ghetto walls and let the Jews out. And how Jews have always looked at that as such a wondrous event. And he said, but in fact, it was the beginning of a huge assimilation, right? That would in ways, if you're an orthodox, polluted the culture. That intermarriage pollutes the culture. So I guess it was ever thus. But somebody, Keenan Malik, I don't know who he is, wrote this, and I think it's just so right. Campaigns against cultural appropriation reveal the changing meaning of racism. Because once racism was a demand for equal treatment for everybody. And now, the people who are fighting racism, supposedly, are calling for cultures to be walled off and boundaries to be policed. You can't have that. That belongs to us. Because it is the lefties and others in minority communities who are now taking umbrage if anyone in the broader community tries to have a say about. Well, here there are two points, and I'm sure some of you have read articles about this. There were two recent art exhibitions, both closed down because white artists dared to, in their art, portray or in some way, what's my word? I'll stick with portray. An event that happened in a minority community. In one case, Native American. In the other case, African American. And all hell breaks loose. You can't, to the white artist, you can't paint a picture of Emmett Till. That needs to be burned. We own that tragedy. We own Emmett Till. And here's the crazy part of that. When that poor boy, I think it was 1955, when Emmett Till was so brutally murdered for looking at a white woman, I guess, his mother insisted that his battered body be on display in an open casket. She wanted everybody to see, look what your hate did to my boy. And her sharing that horror helped spur the civil rights movement, or certainly white people's. It so flipped out white people when they saw his body that the civil rights movement got a big boost. Not because she held her dead son close and away from the very people who killed him, but because she shared him. She put that battered boy's body out there. And it was those photos that played in American newspapers all over the place that were the fodder for this artist's painting. And as she has said, I did it out of sympathy and identification with the mother's grief. I am a mother. What? You mean it wasn't white and black? In other words, she saw something that brought them together. I am a mother, not I am a white mother. You are a black mother.
And I can feel the pain is too awful. Yeah.
And then there's this guy in Minneapolis, I think it was, a sculptor who built this huge, I don't get that it's art myself, but this huge wooden scaffold. It was an exact replica of the scaffold that was built in 1862, I believe, to hang 38 Native Americans. And by the way, this is something Abraham Lincoln signed off on. Just want to say. And his piece was called Scaffold, and it was intended as a memorial to those long dead Native Americans who I'm sure had done nothing.
Right, but they had to take that sucker down.
Oh, man. Not only was it dismantled, and he apologized. And he apologized and donated the wood that he had used to the Dakota Sioux Nation, who were going to use it in a big ceremony where they would burn it. Fine, wonderful, great. This is insanity. Cultural appropriation.
Well, and not only that, but anybody with, like a modicum of understanding of psychology would understand that allowing people to try on your culture is a way to get them to be less afraid of the other. I mean, that's
Exactly.
the whole point behind role playing. And walking around in the shoes of another. It's something actually, to be encouraged. I can't help but think that the problem should be about the mindfulness of the activity. There are ways that it can not be appropriate.
Of course.
But mostly.
But again, we come up with that pesky First Amendment. People have the right to express themselves. If you don't like it, then walk away.
Right.
Or do your own thing and see and put yourself out there in the public square and see where you stand. But this immediate need to smash anything that you find objectionable, to hold on to what you say is mine, when I don't think you can own music. I don't think you can own art. I don't think you can own food. I don't think you can own any of that. Once it's created, once it's shared, once it's out there, and people like it, they replicate it. It evolves, it changes. Thus is a nation built, the United States, or what used to be the United States. Okay, Tawny says, don't forget that in the 50s and 60s there were many black singers who were not paid for their roles and were the voices for the white bands. The white people got the glory and the money for appropriating black musical history. That's not to say appreciation didn't also happen, but don't forget about the power dynamics. It's absolutely right. The recent Miley Cyrus and Katy Perry appropriations means this is still relevant. Relevant. Did I say relevant? Relevant. What recent Miley Cyrus and Katy Perry appropriations? What did they do? Do you know, Celine?
I don't know. Katy Perry appropriated 3 of her dancers, but that must not be what they're talking about. They must be...
What did they do? Celine, do you know? Well, tell us. I don't care if you don't like talking. You know, and we don't know what Tawny's talking about here.
So Katy Perry went on Saturday Night Live and made like a complete fool of herself.
By doing?
By... She this takes a lot of history. So Katy Perry's a pop artist, right?
Yes.
And she's been kind of rebranding herself
Yes,
lately.
I know. That I do know.
Right. And the way that she's been rebranding herself is essentially like a poor imitation of black music. So she got up on stage at Saturday Night Live and had some people who guest starred on her tracks with her come up and like do their portions of the songs, and she did some dance moves that were a little questionable. And
in what way? Questionable in that they were. In what way? I don't even understand what that is. How can a dance move be questionable? Was it what?
It wasn't risque.
Okay, so what was it?
She was just she was
Dancing like a black
She was
person?
imitating black dancers.
Yes, and doing it quite poorly.
Okay, so you laugh at her and move on. I don't know. So what's the... And then what, Miley Cyrus was... What did she do? Was twerking
Yeah,
something that was black?
she went through her whole, kind of hip-hop phase.
Yeah.
She did.
Yeah.
And this is a crime?
I can't speak to that.
Okay. Thank you, though.
We're old, so old.
Well,
because we come from, wait a minute, we come from a time when when rock music was starting, if there was one rock band, there were immediately 6 others that were designed to look exactly the same and to steal their kind of music. That was just expected.
Yeah. Tawny's
the
point...
real band, and then all these sort of little junky ones that were
Right.
sort of like them, that, some made it and some didn't.
Tawny's point, though, that, okay, the whites did appropriate, let's say, black music. But see, stations, let's be clear. In the 1950s, radio stations were almost all owned by white people, and they would not play black musicians, unless it was like, I suppose, Johnny Mathis, right? Mathis, or Nat King Cole. But they would not play Chuck Berry. They would not play rock and roll because it was called race music, which just means it was black.
Black artists.
Then you
Right.
get like Elvis Presley. He lives in the South where that music's happening. He loves that music. That's the music that speaks to him, despite the fact that he's white. And so he is like playing that music, but he's a white boy. So lo and behold, those radio stations play that music because it's a white guy. And yes, he ends up being called the king of rock and roll because our racism refused to allow the real progenitors of the form credit. But
she's also talking about just the
money
audiences in the 50s.
Yeah.
And how these artists were, used because they were popular, but not reimbursed appropriately or anything. But
listen,
they didn't have a choice.
So here this guy writing from London says, and he was talking about the Elvis Chuck Berry thing. He said, but suppose Elvis had been prevented from appropriating that black music. Would that have challenged racism? Would that have helped end Jim Crow? Would that have gotten Chuck Berry songs played on those white radio stations? Obviously not. The fact that Elvis, again, because he loved it, not because he wanted to steal it, appropriated it, and because it happened in a racist culture that then, of course, paid him, where the racist culture wouldn't pay the black man, but because he brought it into the larger population, then the black artists got into, because we all started hearing it. It was wonderful, and then it helped break down the barriers of black, white. Didn't it? Musically? Didn't it?
I think so. Because we became aware of how these people that we admired, suddenly it started to be known how differently they were treated, that they might be playing in a city, but they sure couldn't sleep there.
Yeah.
Or they might be playing Las Vegas as a headliner, but they weren't allowed in the swimming pool.
By the way, Tawny says thank you, Celine.
Welcome, Tawny.
Huh? Thumbs up, Tawny. Denise says, who the hell are we if not the sum of our parts? Cultural appropriation, bah! And of course, Ray's piping in. I think this is back to the Shakespeare stuff. Ray, for those of you who don't know, so hates the English he can't see straight. I mean, he's an Irishman and he hates them. Does that mean you hate Shakespeare, Ray? Ladies, he says.
Wasn't that before the Troubles?
Well,
anyway, go ahead.
I don't know. Oh, God, Ray might blast you for that. I don't know. Ladies, funny how they don't mind pointing out this absurdity in English instead of the language of their ancestors. See, I'm not sure what he's referring to. I got this too long. The English forced cultural appropriation on all their subject. Yeah, so the English blotted out, instead of taking in the cultures that they colonized, they blotted them out. I mean, right? Or tried to. You speak well, we did too. All those Aboriginal society, the Native Americans, all of a sudden it's a crime to speak their own language, to this and that. Their children are taken from them. That, I mean, wouldn't you prefer?
That's what the Australians did to the.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I know, to their Aborigines. Right. So wouldn't the opposite of? I mean. Appropriation is sort of the opposite of that. It's saying, okay, yeah, you keep your language and, I
get some of it too.
You mind if I'm borrowing? God, I love that word. I mean, look at all the words that we speak. There's tons of Yiddish words, for instance, that people who don't have a clue, never even met a Jew, it come out of their mouths. Do Jews say, you can't say schmuck? I own schmuck. You can't say kibbutz. I own kibbutz.
I think
chutzpah. How dare you? What chutzpah that you use chutzpah? But then you look at what cultural appropriation has done to the bagel, and I might jump over to the other side.
Right. Bagels do not come in flavors.
Jeez! Cinnamon and raisin bagel? Ah! Ah! My ancestors they're spinning in their graves. Huh? I know. Celine's saying you can't have it both ways. I am mostly for cultural appropriation. Almost totally. Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, they can make those things and they can call them
bagels. I don't have to eat them.
I'm not going to. I'm not going to eat one.
I don't have to eat them. So, so the other thing I thought we would talk about, since we're women who are talkative, is this thing that has been going on forever, but all of a sudden, media is noticing it. So it becomes a thing. And that is, do you notice how often women who are speaking are interrupted by men?
What are you talking about?
No, that didn't work, Susan, because I was done when you did that. Were you trying to interrupt me?
I was trying to interrupt.
Yeah, well, you had to cut me off. I put a period on that, and then you came in. But now, Ariana Huffington, who's on the board of Uber, is at a meeting, and she says to the mostly male board, gentlemen, I really think that what we need to change this culture that is screwing up our company is we do need more women on the board. And some guy on the board said, oh, great. So now, I forget exactly what he said, so now...
Now we'll have more talking.
More talking is what he said. And I want to say this. He was then forced to resign. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, he shouldn't have to resign. He should apologize. And
Yeah.
learn.
I mean, come on. What is this? I hate this now.
Why
any
do
time.
we want to
We want to throw everybody overboard.
Create,
I'm sorry, Susan. Go ahead.
why do we want to create a bunch of people who will hate the very, who will not like women even more because it cost them this,
Well,
it's not a way to win friends and influence people. There is such a thing as an opportunity to learn.
Well, I'm sorry, though, but there is just something so... It's like... It reminds me of like the Maoist cultural revolution. It's like... You could not say that word. You say that word, you have that thought, you are sent off to a reprogramming camp immediately. What is happening to us?
Right. Well,
she should have just... Ariana Huffington, who, by the way, I have met, I have interviewed, she, I'm sure, took care of herself just fine in that situation.
I'm sure, too. And I think we've even talked about this, but there are, women who, in corporate settings, if they are lucky enough to have more than one woman among their particular ranks, are constantly noticing that a woman will put forth an idea and it will be ignored, and then a man will say it and it will be
brilliant.
Great. And
well, it's brilliant.
And
right.
that the rule is that the second woman pipes in and said, yes, as so-and-so brought up 15 minutes ago, it would work very well if blah, 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 and just remind them where they heard it.
Well, the New York Times is doing a piece on this, and they asked their readers for examples and put them on their Facebook page. And here, one woman said exactly what you just said. She said, I can't even count the number of times I've witnessed a woman being interrupted and talked over by a man, only to hear him later repeat the same ideas she was trying to put forward, and thus getting credit for them. Talk about appropriation. There is appropriation, right, of the white male, of the lesser female. But in the Senate of the United States, we're seeing this example over and over. Elizabeth Warren told us, sit down and shut up. Senator Warren. Senator Kamala Harris trying to question Attorney General Jefferson Beauregard Sessions is interrupted by Senator John McCain, who is not the chair. He's just another guy sitting on the panel, interrupted by the chair, who says, stop interrupting him. Stop. McCain interrupts her to say, stop interrupting Sessions and let him answer. Now, I saw the whole exchange because I wondered. And I must say this, she did interrupt him constantly. She was just, he would start talking and she'd say, but what she was doing is he was going off on some kind of bullshit response, and she was playing the tough prosecutor that she is. So she wouldn't let him go where he wanted to go. And so it was a very contentious back and forth. And eventually the chair cut her off, said, you're out of time. That was the end of that. But other senators questioning Sessions cut him off, peppered him with questions. No other senator said, shut up, let him finish. It's only when women talk. Somebody just said they can't hear Susan.
Oh, you got to listen with your other ear.
Yeah, Susan's on mono. I'm on stereo. Well, change it if you want. Anybody else can't hear Susan? Why would that all of a sudden just be?
Well, I just want that person to know that they missed a lot of brilliance.
Okay, Beth, Susan wants you to know that you have missed a lot of brilliant repartee on her part. And here's Clarence, speaking of brilliant repartee. Hey, Clarence, I got to tell you, I have had in the last, I'd say maybe a month, more than one emailer saying, I miss Clarence. Have you not been... I don't miss you. You've been calling, haven't you? I mean, what?
Yeah, I have called.
Yeah.
We were off last week, and then...
whatever.
And it's summertime. You know, my schedule's a lot different, so I'm not home at 10 o'clock in the morning. So,
okay, well, here you...
I'm not going to call as often.
Okay, here's...
And I try not to call every day.
That's a good thing you do. Good thing you do. I don't like people who call every day. It starts becoming their show, and I don't like that. It's appropriation, you know what I mean, of my show. So, Clarence, what made you call?
Let's start. I don't want to interrupt, but, you know, two women. It was cultural appropriation that got me to call, because I had this conversation with people talking about cultural appropriation. I said, well, culture evolves.
Exactly.
You know, the culture you're thinking that's being appropriated was appropriated from a culture, which was appropriated from a culture.
What came first, the chicken or the egg? Yeah, you're saying everything, comes from something else. It just keeps changing.
It just keeps changing, and people always appropriate cultures. You know, if we didn't, we'd all be sitting in the Middle East somewhere, farming. You know what I mean? Or, in Africa, running through the savannah.
Yeah.
It's like,
right. There would be no growth.
There would be no growth. Exactly. Everybody appropriates. It's like people talking about their ancestry. Well, I'm an Italian American. Yeah, I'm sure your parents and your grandparents might came from Italy, but where their parents and grandparents came from. You're not going back far enough. You go back far enough where just,
Although I got to tell you, Susan, interrupting you, I have to tell you.
Well, I'm a black man, so you're allowed to do it.
Yeah. So, Susan and I just had our DNA done. I know you don't approve. You don't like that, right? But we wanted. It was mostly.
No.
It was mostly our mother who wanted to know in her. She's going to be 95, and she's just starting to wonder, where'd I come from? Okay. And so we all sat around a table and spit into a tube and sent it off. And the results came back, and man, I was astonished actually at how almost pure we are. We're 96% one thing. Is that not amazing in this day and age?
Yeah, what is it? The Jew that begins with the H.
That's right.
Yeah,
we are 96% Ashkenazi Jew. Now that means, and what I said when I saw it, I said, "What? How could that be? How could that be? You mean the women in my family were so ugly a Cossack wouldn't rape them? What is that? There's no blood coming in from someplace else?"
That's funny. That, and even
But isn't that amazing?
We did start in Africa. It did take us back 100,000 years ago to a one woman in Africa.
Yeah.
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 That's, I think, but isn't that like everybody's ancestor, the RNA?
Pretty much.
But
Although,
yeah,
there's that.
Pretty much.
It then goes into these different subgroups. And our subgroup was relatively rare, and it's quite clear that it must have been our father who was almost, or one of his parents, almost 100% Ashkenazi Jew. And that's mind-blowing. But you know what did that? Ghettos.
What's that?
Ghettos.
Yeah,
Segregation. Jews weren't allowed to assimilate.
Yeah, that was the point I was gonna bring up. But speaking of that, I was searching, like census records one time from my great grandfather, who moved to Canonsburg in like 1895 from Virginia, and so that's how long my family's been in Canonsburg. But typing in his last name, I found a special that was done on 60 Minutes in 1999 about the Hairston family, which is my
Is that the family?
Last name, or my great. Yeah.
Oh.
And they were like the Hairstons were, I think, the second largest slave owners in America. There was like a whole series, like a whole 60 Minutes thing done on the Hairston family. and so I found their website and their Facebook page, and I asked the question, am I one of these people? It took 2 months. They got back to me, yes. So I come from, one of the
Hairston plantation. Yeah.
A Hairston plantation. They were all over the place.
Yeah.
They weren't just in like Virginia. They were all over the place. They were huge. Yeah, I was like, wow, look at that. Maybe I should get some reparations. But the whole Hairston clan, they there's a bunch of them. They had a few semi-famous people, and it was really interesting to see.
It is. It's fascinating to see from whence we came. But most people are much. I mean, most people are not 96% something. They're not.
No, definitely not.
Unless you go. I was talking to my brother. Go to Iceland. They're 100%. All of them. And you know what? He says in Iceland, it is that little island is so, inbred that they have an app on their phones. Like, say you meet a girl in a bar in Iceland, and you're liking each other. They actually, he said, they touch their phones together, and it comes up if they're first cousins, let's say, because they don't know. They don't know. And there's always concern when you start dating, an Icelander starts dating an Icelander, that, we're inbreeding too much because they're all related. All related. Isn't that weird?
That makes you very susceptible to, like, disease and genetic mutations and weirdness, yeah.
Yeah, but they seem
I guess that's
okay.
better than having a dad that's a player. You just don't know who your sisters are.
Well, I think they're sexually rather free, so that a lot of people have half brothers, half sisters. They don't have a clue. They're half brothers and half sisters. So I'm just saying. And you know what?
We were always.
Go ahead.
No, we were always told that we were, Scott Irish, was in our blood, and the Hairstons were Scotch. So
there you go.
Comes from, but they were Scottish, but
great.
I always tell people, that's where my light complexion comes from. It has to come from somewhere.
You should do a spitting thing yourself and just see how polluted you are that ended up making you.
My oldest sister really wants me to do that. She wants me to do it as opposed to she doing it, but I'll probably end up doing it.
Somebody do it. It is fascinating. Just to do it costs like.
The reason for you to do it, Clarence, is because you'll show both mother and father genetics. She'll only show mothers.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. All right.
So, I always trace my ancestry back to, what is it called? Oh, my joke is gone. Forget it.
Oh, you screwed it up.
Yeah. I always put Pangean. On my census.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you? You're a Pangean. Right.
Yeah.
Before the continents.
The primordial ooze.
Right, before the continent split up. All right, guys, we are out of time. We're beyond out of time, okay? Clarence, good to hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm still alive, folks.
Good. Alive and well.
Right.
Thank you. And Susan,
You're
thank you. And
You're
anybody
welcome.
listening, thank you. And tomorrow we've got Bill Steigerwald on the show, author of a book that is mind-blowing. And it is a lot about what we've been talking about in part. It is about racism. And it's fascinating, okay? So don't miss tomorrow. See you then.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.